Good afternoon. This is the first episode of The Rest is Politics with me, Diar O'Donovan.
And me, Dean O'Connor.
We've got a lot to talk about today, as it has been a very, very busy week for Ireland's political climate, to say the very least.
So, in light of that, today we will be speaking about the following topics. Have the Social Democrats been cheated by Labour in this new coalition? What is Fianna Fáil going to look like under its new leader, Quilerian? And what went wrong for Fine Gael and Sinn Féin in the most recent election?
So, kicking off with the first point, what do you think about the new coalition, Dean?
I'm certainly a bit biased in my thoughts here
Yes.
in regards to the coalition. I have a slight fondness for Labour. I quite like their sort of revival in recent months
It's been
ever
quite
since
impressive.
Lynn took over as leader.
It has been quite impressive. I think that's fair enough. And I know that you've always had a slight dislike of the campaigning methods which the Social Democrats have embarked on lately.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't like the campaign methods of Michael McGrath's leadership of the Social Democrats. I didn't like it. I don't like the idea you just slip into someone's DMs with the, come on, man, I want you to really vote for me, man. You'd be doing me such a favour, man. It's like, I hate that so much. So,
it's
you
sort
know,
of
I
that
don't
essence.
have a great opinion of the Social Democrats
It's
on
sort
that
of
front.
Michael.
But
Sorry.
yeah, it's all right. But it's under new leadership now, which I'm sure you're about to
Yes.
mention.
Yeah, and I was just saying it's a bit of Michael trying to bring in a bit of Roblox populism there, which hasn't always. I don't know if it's been tried before, but I mean it's certainly worked to a degree. But of course, I mean it really doesn't earn you a very good title in the books of other parties, as evident from the fact that he won the most seats, but didn't enter a government with them, with any party. But we have now got a Social Democrat Labour coalition. We've waited for this for a while. I think. I can't remember when the last one was. This is probably where Chiara was leader of the Social Democrats, and that didn't exactly go well. But I mean, I think the reason why this question, have the Social Democrats been cheated by Labour in this coalition, is so important is because somehow the Social Democrats have entered a coalition with two more seats than Labour, but have only left with Taoiseach and one other ministerial position which Brian is holding, and leader of the Seanad, if I'm not correct. If I am correct, am I wrong there?
No, I think you are right on your facts there. I think Brian is not. I believe he's taken up the position of foreign minister, if I remember correctly.
Right.
I might
yes,
be completely
he has,
wrong on that. Because I think that's the position you held.
It was. I'm Taoiseach as well. I've been replaced, Dean. I've been replaced.
Yeah. So I mean, Brian, I don't doubt some of his skill as a statesman. I really don't. But I think he's entered this coalition. I don't think he envisioned trying to take over this government. I think he's only just become his party's leader after being overthrown previously by the previous leadership.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to come into this government thinking, I'm going to take this government over from Lynn. I think instead it's very much a case of, I'm going to support this government. I'm going to use the amount of seats I've got to get what I want through. And then I'm hopefully going to win the next election.
I absolutely agree. But I think it does say a lot about the experience and also the skill of members within the Social Democrats if they've taken so few cabinet positions. I mean,
that is another thing, actually. Yeah, I think another ulterior motive is that he's not exactly got a skilled team. He's not got a skilled pool to really uphold his end of the government to a degree that would, involve him taking over from Lynn. So I guess that's another motive for why he's sort of taken a bit of a backseat here with the coalition.
He's also taken less Seanad seats than Labour as well. I mean, I think I was personally quite shocked, not only because I lost my job with the click of fingers, but in a Thanos sort of way, but that this coalition had been so lopsided despite the odds going against that. So I was personally quite surprised. But clearly I don't know whether this decision had been rushed. I mean, I have to assume it was, because it was only a matter of hours after Craw had been elected that this happened. But it might have been something that was in the works during the leadership election because there was always the possibility that that outcome was going to happen. Um,
Hmm.
but who knows what happened if Nicholas had won or whatever. Um, but I think it's something interesting to think about is how this coalition is going to continue. And something that stood out for me was the fact that they're keeping the programme for government. So these policies are continuing. So what basically we've got here is we've got a government between Labour and the Social Democrats um, that's got Fianna Fáil and Labour policies uh, run by the Labour and the Social Democrats. So I don't exactly know how this is gonna work, whose favour this is gonna work into, whose hand these cards are gonna play into in that sense. But we can only assume that the, the policies that are proposed by Fianna Fáil are going to be delivered not to a higher standard as the ones that Labour were proposing in this programme for government, because for obvious reasons, Labour are going to be more familiar with their policies, and the Social Democrats, I don't know whether some of their policies that weren't in the programme for government, whether they're going to try and implement those at some point during the government, but they have got just I think a month and 2 weeks or something around that to turn this around, to play it in their favour, and we can only time will tell what really happens there.
I mean, yeah, I think there is a certain point where I mean, it's quite curious. It's quite curious that the Social Democrats have sort of gotten with Labour right after Labour and Fianna Fáil ran some very direct campaigns against the Social Democrats.
that
Obviously,
is
it was
that
more
is true.
targeted. It was more targeted at Michael and Cecilia rather than the Social
Definitely.
Democrats, but you get the point.
I think
Um,
the Social Democrats sort of a new party now, in a sense. I mean, it's completely they've lost many of their members. I think they've lost about 20. I mean, so Fianna Fáil. They've they've lost that sort of troublemaking gang. So hopefully Brian is going to try and bring a sense of stability. However, the question is whether it's going to play in his favour, because last time Brian ran an election campaign on his own, it ended up with him winning a seat, just the one or two, I can't remember. So it depends on whether he's learnt anything from Michael and Facilio, whether he's going to try and use their tactics in this election, reusing campaign material. I'm not sure in terms of those DM picture things that they use that you dislike.
mhm.
Um,
One thing that's very surprising as well is that we're seeing a Brian who was on one seat, and we're now seeing a Brian that's got a total of 9 seats or something,
yeah,
8 or 9
yeah.
seats, something like that. Which is quite funny, really, because we've had the Brian that led his party pretty much into disaster, and we've now got a Brian who's leading a successful version of the Social Democrats,
Absolutely,
and it'll be
absolutely.
really funny to see if that completely collapses or not. It'd be funny to see for me, but probably not very funny for him.
Yes, well, that's the great thing about no longer being directly involved in politics for me, is that I can sit on the sidelines and watch everything crumble, or watch
Hmm.
parties build from the bottom up. Um, I believe we've covered that topic in some depth. So we're going to move on to our second point, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we're going to talk about what is Fianna Fáil going to look like under Craw.
Not
Um,
very good.
no, I'm not sure. I've had my certain disputes with Craw during my time as leader of the party. As many people know, I led the party for 10 and a half months. Longest leader of Fianna Fáil. In that time, I was leader of the opposition and Taoiseach, and then I was Taoiseach, but not as leader of the party. So I have really been in the party and seen what happens in it at all angles. Um, personally, I think Craw is gonna really play to a certain market of Fianna Fáil members, and that is those people who believe in sort of the more right wing part of the party. I think I definitely tried to play a lot to the moderate of the party, um, because I realise that Ireland is generally quite left wing. This community, sort of more sort of centre
Hmm.
left, quite liberal. So I played my cards in that direction because I knew that if you just go right wing, like Des did, my predecessor, you're only going to turn out with quite a low seat count. Um, but it's the question of whether Craw's been given a massive amount of seats, hasn't he? And it's whether he's going to use that to his advantage, or whether he is going to, because he's been given a massive head start. It's not.
I've got to be honest with you, I don't think it comes down to anything regarding ideology or anything like that. It just comes down to the fact that at the end of the day, if you're leading a party, you've got to have a certain degree of flexible skill. And I don't think Crawlerian's got any of that. I think he's quite a stubborn bloke, to be quite frank. And I don't think he's going to be able to work with anyone unless he's getting his way. And just, I don't see it ending very well for him in the coming election. Even in this duel alone, I don't think it's going to end well for him at all. I think he's going to turn Fianna Fáil into like the Facilio and Michael Social Democrats.
Right,
it's going to be this party of just like obstructionists who just don't care, essentially. That's the worry I get from him.
There's been quite a lot of divide in the party, because I mean, I've been in quite close contact with members of the party.
Well, you ran it.
Who I've been quite close to. And I've heard quite a lot of divide within the party at the moment between whether to get on Craw's boat and in the direction that he's going, or whether to stay on track on where they're going and hope that together they can rally enough support to turn the party around in the direction it's going, which is in quite a radically opposite direction to where it was going before. But it's honestly, I mean, I think we should talk about the attendance that we've seen from Fianna Fáil. I mean, the question period was pretty awful. But
I've taken a look at their attendance. I've looked at the Oractor sheet, and
last night was not bad.
I mean, Social Democrat attendance is just like, I mean,
yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of seats that have had to be replaced and whatnot. Yes. I do understand that, but it's really not looking good for Fianna Fáil and the Social Democrats. Labour seem to be doing all right. Considering their numbers, they're doing all right. Fianna Fáil last night, considering their numbers, is a bit and Social Democrats, though, is just like, what is going on?
Last night, Fianna Fáil had 5 out of 7 present, which isn't bad.
Yeah, that's pretty good, honestly.
Question period wasn't very good. But I mean, always the legislative session is always going to get more TDs coming, because that's when the party leaders are crashing down into direct messages, screaming at their TDs to get them to join, because that's when it matters. Even though
try do that, but with 30 members of a parliament.
Honestly, I tried it with 10, and that was too much, Dean. But I think this government's got 16 seats compared to the opposition 9. So it's not like either side is particular. I mean, I remember when when I was in government, it was 13 to 11. No, 13 to 12. And I remember when I was in opposition, Killian was 13 to 12. So when you've got that, it really is a push to get your TDs there, because that is when you have the opportunity to pass or to filibuster legislation and stop it. And that sometimes when it's such a big majority, like when you went with Killian, slightly boring. It is slightly boring because bills.
It does get quite boring. That term was a very boring term, I will admit. Looking back, it was not as much fun as I think I made it out
everything
to be. It was very boring.
That's the boring thing, isn't it? It's exciting when a couple of things get filibustered every session. When everything just passes by voice vote and there's no division, there's no one vote.
It's not very fun though when the clerk doesn't let you, or when the clerk doesn't let you vote on your bill first, even when everyone agrees on it and whatnot. That's what really ticks me off.
I remember you were like screaming, asking for the National Ambulance Service bill, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that was good times. Good times. Right. Well. So yeah, I think what we're going to look at is for Craw is whether he's gonna stop fixing his eyes on this vision that he has and start opening up to the whole greater party picture. I think that for me is the decider of whether Fianna Fáil in the next election is going to lose 1 seat, possibly stay at the same, or lose 5.
I don't see him keeping what I got. I'll be honest with you. I don't think. I mean, let's be honest here. I'll ask you a question actually. Do you intend to help their campaign at all?
No.
Okay, and then they're gonna lose badly.
I can't. I'm a
That's
civil
what it comes
servant
down
now.
to.
I'm a civil servant now, Dean.
Well, in that case, if they don't have you, then they're screwed. I mean,
I'm.
that's not even a compliment. That is just a no fall. All of their successful campaigns have mostly been because of you. They're not going to have that now for the first time. How can they do anything but badly?
Yeah, I appreciate your kindness with that, Dean. I appreciate
It's not kindness. It is facts. It's just facts.
Right. But yeah, I mean that is something that needs to be raised. Whether sort of, I mean, we've seen Max resign and me resign, and there who God knows who else is going to resign. We have, I mean, there was floating around people going, oh, there's going to be mass resignations. There hasn't really. There's been two big ones. That was Max and I. But I don't know how the party's going to do. It honestly depends on whether Craw can get people to get out there and campaign. Because when I was leader, I can openly say that I did. I'd say I did over 50% of the overall campaigning. At least at least getting the votes. I don't know how many people actually DM'd, but out of getting votes, I'd say I got just over 50% of that. I know there were other people who were massively helpful during elections. But it's the question of whether they can account for that 50% now and team together and get out there and campaign, because it's really up to them now whether they want to keep those seats or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, only time will tell how Fianna Fáil does in the next general election. Some people thought it was going to be sooner than others, perhaps even a couple of days ago, but turns out Labour and Social Democrats had other ideas. But anyway, we'll see how Craw does in opposition, and we will come back and talk a little bit about that next week. But I think the final thing we need to talk about, which is a little bit dated, but this is the first episode, so we didn't have one last week, is Fine Gael and Sinn Féin. I mean, that they had 7 seats in the last Dáil,
and now they got about 2 between them.
Now they got 2 between them. So what went wrong?
Everything. If we want to take a look at, I'll talk about Sinn Féin first. I mean, I used to lead Sinn Féin, and Sinn Féin is a party where you can kind of do anything with it, really. It's a very open brand. And it mostly comes down to the fact that, obviously, IRL, Sinn Féin, although they are a very left-leaning party, you can sort of go very hard with the nationalist element regardless, and you can go very hard with patriotism and whatnot. And I think there's a lot of freedom on that front. Whereas now, I mean, a leader that's able to capitalise on that, that's great. That's wonderful. I mean,
when the leader's got Anglo in their name,
well.
though.
Yeah, I led Sinn Féin pretty well, and I'd say Kira did an all right job at it as well. Kira, kept it going, albeit with a few seat loss. That's fine. Seat losses, come on, we all lose seats sometimes. But she still led it into a government. She still led Sinn Féin, survived, 2 Labour Taoiseachs. So, I mean, she did a good job. But then when Potato Kill took over, it went downhill. I don't think he had what it takes really to really capitalise on the Sinn Féin brand. He sort of turned it into a very boring brand. He turned it into a party that had nothing unique going for it. Pretty much every policy bar the IDF autonomy one that got ditched the very next election, the most recent one. All in all, all the other parties were basically doing what Sinn Féin was pledging, but better, with more detail and more substance. So there was no reason to be a Shinner. So I would say that Sinn Féin sort of brought this on themselves. They just became boring, but that's not to say that they won't ever come back. I mean, Sinn Féin for months was under Kenny's leadership. They kept on getting opposition despite getting the most seats and stuff.
Well,
so
I can relate to that.
They have a habit for surviving.
I can relate to that.
Yes, you can.
I beat him by about 10 days, I think. So,
oh, wow.
As leader of the opposition. I'm the longest serving leader of the opposition. Or, as you would say, longest serving second place. Is that right? Or loser?
No, I said it's the greatest loser of Ireland or something like that.
Oh, thank you, Dean. Thank you.
Yeah, the most successful loser, something like that.
Fair enough. I mean, Sinn Féin for me holds a bit of a place in my Irish heart, because it was the first party that I was a Táchta Dála for. I entered in May 5th, 2022. I entered the door as a Sinn Féin TD under Michael McGrath, and I became last con caller. So I was there for I think one term before moving to Fianna Fáil, and I think that's the first party that I really supported. I supported Fine Gael before that when they were under Killian, despite it being a complete and utter shit show.
Don't remind Killian about those times. I don't think he likes being reminded.
And then I did move to Sinn Féin because I had a guy in my DMs going, "Would you mind supporting me, man?" And so I did, and then he asked me, "Would you like to be a candidate, man?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And then he said, "Would you like to be a TD, man?" And I said, "Yeah, sure."
Is this Joe Biden?
No, this is Michael.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Way too much fun for a Sunday morning. Sunday afternoon, crikey. But yes, so that was basically the rest is history. And I think Sinn Féin is a party that has always had a lot of potential. You can take it in any direction, as you said. And it's a party that's been led by all different types of people from all different sort of places on the spectrum.
Speaking of boring, on the topic of boringness, while Sinn Féin has become boring, I'll tell you a party that's been boring for the last year and
Fine Gael?
pretty much, Fine Gael. It's just really sad. I think because
I remember
party
your
that used to be led.
Your disappointment when the manifesto came out.
I mean, let's go through this. Victoria O'Neill, fantastic politician. Yeah, she made her mistakes. We all do. But she did a good, all right? She's still remembered very fondly by, all the political enthusiasts of this community, including myself. However, now it's just been a long road of just fall after fall after fall, and just an absolutely not even a sharp decline, a slow, painful decline. And I feel like no person represents that decline more than the current leader of Fine Gael, James Aitken, who, former two-time Taoiseach, this veteran of a politician. And I keep hearing that. People say, oh, he's a veteran Taoiseach, he's a veteran politician of the community, as if that's an excuse for him to put in no effort whatsoever into his party. It's like, we can say that veterans can be bad at what they're doing now. I wouldn't say when I led Sinn Féin that was as good as when I led the UK Labour Party.
I remember
two very different me's.
The first time I came across James Aitken was when he did lead the Conservative Party, didn't he, in Solves?
He did, yes. I think he's still... No, he doesn't anymore, but he used to, yeah.
I saw the leaders' debate. Was it you debating against him?
Yes, I believe so. I attended most of the debates with him.
That was the first time I ever came across him, and I remembered him instantly because of his Northern Irish accent. And I think I've been quite close with James for a while. I think especially got a bit closer during the coalition government. And I think he's committed to several areas, and I know I've spoken to him about this. Graphics
not party management.
His graphics are not his forte, and I think that there's sort of a level of demotivation when you can't put together something that looks nice, whether it's got the substance or not. No one wants a manifesto that looks bad, right?
Yeah, obviously, but I don't think a part of me thinks it's excuses. I mean, a part of me just thinks it's excuses for what is ultimately someone who's clearly lost their spark now and clearly just doesn't care. I love James. He's great. He's got a great voice, namely. But
thanks a million.
I just really, really, really don't think he's cut out to lead the party anymore. And I feel like that the election that just went by, a lot more people should have just said to him, mate, just resign. You're clearly not doing any good for your party. Fine Gael should have died last election. It should have just been a case of, right, well, it's time to wipe the party. because it clearly just does not need to exist anymore. It shouldn't have existed the last 3 elections,
I'm
but
not.
it's been slowly staggering around, like crawling on the floor
Occasionally,
to each election.
it's been a situation of gaining 5 votes, losing 7 votes, gaining 3 votes, losing 3.
Yeah.
It's always just sort of they're small amounts that the losers and gains. And I think in the last coalition, Kenny was someone who certainly stood out for me. He was quite an exceptional business minister. I mean, he had his faults. Of course, there was the policy issue at the beginning of our term.
Thinking about it, why doesn't Kenny lead Fine Gael? Kenny would probably do a better job than James is doing right now. Like,
don't ask
hands
me.
down.
Don't ask me.
If Kenny's going to be listening to this, Kenny, start considering a leadership spill, all right?
But who knows how many views we'll get. Only time will tell with that. Only time will tell, and we'll see how Fine Gael and Sinn Féin do. Attendance is not bad from both sides. Anglos.
Well, they've only got one person, Diarmid. It's very hard to go wrong with that.
Yes, I remember Brian's old joke of 100% Social Democrat attendance when he was the one.
Yeah, record breaking.
Anyway,
it's like.
So yeah, carry on.
No, I wasn't going to say anything. I will say one thing. It's sad. It is quite sad what's happened to Fine Gael. I do sort of vaguely remember the days where even I was planning to run as leader back when Ireland first got created, because I had just come from New Labour in SOGS UK just after Theo Novak's tenure as Prime Minister. And I just come to Ireland, and I remember it was me versus Gustav Rhodes versus James Aitken. James Aitken won by 1 vote, and this is now the butterfly effect. This is what's happened as a result of that statement. I am responsible for the death of Fine
Gael. Well, who knows? Honestly, if history changed, who knows? Maybe James would have been too shook for a 3rd term. But maybe that's still possible, Dean.
It really isn't, I don't think.
Anyway, need to put a bloody good amount of effort in if he wants to achieve that. Anyway, this has been the first episode of The Rest is Politics. We've talked about the Social Democrats, whether they've been cheated by Labour. We've gone into Craw's new Fianna Fáil party, where his new take on the party, whether that's going to help them, whether it's not, how it's going to look in the next election, and a little bit into Fine Gael, Sinn Féin, why Sinn Féin is looking so boring, and why Fine Gael seems to be stuck in the past. I think that's all that we wanted to speak about today. Make sure to tune in next week, where Dean and I will surely be back, hopefully, if Dean wants to do it again.
Will I, won't I? You'll find out next week.
Yes, if it's a one-man show, you'll have your answer. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. This has been The Rest is Politics.